Good day, everyone, and today we will be discussing about Practical Research 1, Module 1 or Week 1. And then we will be exploring about the research experience, and we will also be discussing the importance of research. And then after that, we will be introducing what is qualitative research and what are the goals of qualitative research, as well as the approaches of qualitative research. And then after that, we will be discussing the qualitative research methods. And that's it for our week 1 in Practical Research 1 or Prac 1. And I will be your teacher for today. So let's start. So the research experience. Have you ever tried searching anything related to COVID-19, such as, for example, COVID-19 cases? Or have you ever heard about the term or the phrase flattening the curve? Or when you went out to get vaccinated, did you try to search something about the vaccine, or did you try to search which vaccine is more efficient or more effective than the other? So have you heard about the news about Lagundi for COVID-19, or what about the VCO or the virgin coconut oil for COVID-19, and what about the infamous ivermectin for COVID-19? So what you were doing is a kind of research. It's a form of research, and there's a problem. Here you have a certain problem that you want to search about. So this is the problem. And then these are the questions. So like, what are the cases? How do we flatten the curve? What's the vaccine? Which vaccine is more efficient? Can Lagundi be used as a therapeutic medicine for COVID-19? Can VCO be used? Can ivermectin be used? So these are research questions. And then, where do we get the answer? So the answer, we can get the answer from people who did research about these kinds of problems or these kinds of topics. So we get the answer to our question because a lot of people are doing their research. Alright, so for example, COVID-19 cases. So we get this PubMats in Facebook, right? We see this a lot in Facebook, and as you can see, it shows a lot of data. There's a data for the number of negative results, and the number of positive results, the number of recovered, and the number of vaccinated. So these are numbers, and when we try to analyze these numbers or these data, then we are doing qualitative research. So for example, this is the data from Google about the new cases here in the Philippines in the past 3 months. So as you can see, there's a trend. So if we want to analyze these trends, so starting from November, and then it spiked up around December to January 18, there's a considerable increase, and then after that there's a considerable decline. So what's that? If we want to know what that means, or if we want to know the meaning behind those data, then we are doing a research. And for example, in these tests, as you can see here in this data, the number of tests increases, and as well as the number of positive results. And then here in around February, we can see that the positive tests are declining because the number of tests are also declining. So we have to be careful with how we give meaning to the data that we have, to the data that we encounter or that we see every day in Facebook feed, everywhere in the internet. We need to be careful and scrutinize carefully these kinds of data, and that's what we are doing here in research. Alright, so for example, COVID-19, flattening the curve. What does it mean by flattening the curve? So I'm sure you have heard in your mathematics subject, we have this term, normal distribution. So there's a curve. There's a bell-shaped curve, right? You have encountered that in your mathematics. Now, how can we use this curve to give meaning to the data or to the number of cases in COVID-19? There's a person who did a research and tried to model the dynamics of COVID-19. So this is what he did. he plotted or yeah, he plotted the number of observed cases. So here's these are the number of infected individuals, and this is the number of days. So in the span of 100 days, or let's just work with 0 to 50. So in the span of 0 to 50, there's a considerable increase and then a considerable decline. So based on the observed cases, these are the numbers per day. So it peaked around 22, day 22. So it peaked around day 22, and it's around 51,000 cases. And then this one, this pink graph or the pink curve, this is what he modeled. So he tried to predict the number of cases. He tried to predict the number of infected individuals based on the observed data. So that's modeling, that's mathematical modeling of COVID cases. And then what's interesting is that when we want to flatten the curve, so that here's what happens. Just try to look at the red or the pink curve. So as you can see, we have this effective contact rate, and here in effective contact rate, as you can see, as the effective contact rate decreases, so from 4, as the effective contact rate decreases, the curve, this red curve, gets flattened. This one, the curve gets flattened. So that's what it means by flattening the curve. But what is effective contact rate? So just to have an overview, or just to have an idea, this is the effective contact rate. It means that for one day, you get to have one contact. So regardless of social distancing, if you get to physical contact a person, or if you get to be in the same room with one person, then that's a contact. That's considered a contact. And here, the effective contact rate and this indicates that in one day, and each individuals, these 20,000 individuals, if these individuals has one contact, maximum of one contact per day, then these are the number of predicted cases. The red graph. Okay, and if you know what's happening here in the Philippines, we have hospitals that are overcapacitated, right? Meaning they cannot accommodate more people. So this line, this dashed line, is the healthcare system capacity. And as you can see, if 20,000 people have one contact rate, so if the effective contact rate is one, and each person contacts one person per day, then the healthcare system capacity is still okay. The number of cases is still under here. But if we try to move this, let's check the effective contact rate becomes 1.5, just half, meaning 20,000 people contacts around 30,000 people. Then the effective contact rate and the number of cases, as you can see, it increases drastically, and it leads to overcapacity of hospitals. So that's what's happening here in the Philippines. The hospitals are overcapacitated and they cannot accommodate more cases. So this is this effective contact rate. This is the basis of a lot of policies, like for example, social distancing, and lockdown and quarantine. This is the reason for that. So we wanted the public to minimize their contact rate, so such that they will only contact less than one or less than two people per day, and then it will effectively decreases the cases. And if we want to avoid the overcapacitation of hospitals, then we want to have as low effective contact rate as possible. So that's what happens when we actually try to follow protocols and do social distancing. And how did they do this, or what's the basis for this modeling? These are not just graphs or line for nothing. So they got this model from this equation. It's a differential equation, and that's what makes this type of modeling a mathematical modeling. They were modeling the data based on they were trying to predict the movement or the behavior of the graph based on the observed data, and that's mathematical modeling. And this is actually introduced in calculus, and some of the concepts here are taught in your pre-calculus subject. So if you actually learn more about pre-calculus, and then after that, if you learn more about calculus, you can also do this kind of modeling. Okay, so that's just for appreciation. And then for Lagundi, for COVID-19, we have this news going around that the DOST suggested that the recommended use of Lagundi for mild COVID-19. And then it says here that the results, there's a result and there's the clinical trial, and it shows that mild COVID-19 patients may take specific dosages to improve their symptoms. So again, we want to be critical of the information that we are taking. So it says here to improve their symptoms. Again, it's not to cure but to improve their symptoms. And Lagundi is already well known as a cough medicine. Alright, but based on the clinical trials, what's very assuring here is that it is conducted through a clinical trial, meaning COVID patients with mild cases of COVID patients already tried to take specific dosages of Lagundi, and they showed some improvement. That's why we can use Lagundi as a way to improve the COVID symptoms. And then VCO for COVID-19, they were also conducting this type of research, and then what they did was and they used VCO as a supplement for probable and suspect cases, and it shows that 5 of the 29 patients who were served meals with VCO, so they put VCO in their meals, and they manifested diminishing signs and symptoms as early as the second day, while only one patient, which is kind of an outlier because they didn't put any VCO, but still he or she showed similar improvement. Alright, so again, we want to be critical about the data that we are trying to understand. It says here that those patients who were served meals with VCO manifested diminishing signs. So meaning there was an improvement and the symptoms were diminishing, meaning decreasing in terms of its severity. Alright, so it's amazing because we didn't know this before. Before, COVID-19 was this new type of disease, and we didn't know what to do. But now there are a lot of researches and a lot of studies that were suggesting possible therapeutic medicines. And this one, speaking of medicine, so we have this ivermectin for COVID-19. So I'm sure a lot of people tried to search ivermectin, the use of ivermectin, and we want to clarify that. Alright, so what's ivermectin? So ivermectin is an antihelmintic drug, which is antihelmintic, meaning yung pang deworm. It's used for the deworming of animals in your barangay. If a lot of you haven't been dewormed yet, so hindi yan yung bibigay sa inyo, since ivermectin is used for the deworming of animals. And then around 2021, or just last year, there was an increase in the number of prescriptions for ivermectin. So I think there was a news or a paper that tried to test whether ivermectin can be used for COVID-19. And then I guess a lot of people already took action and took ivermectin. And then after that, there was a report around 2021. There was a report from Poison Control Centers reporting that there's a threefold increase in the number of human exposures to ivermectin, meaning there were a lot of people that are reported to have adverse effects or to have toxic effects from inappropriately high doses of ivermectin. So they were trying to use ivermectin for something else, probably. So probably it may be COVID-19 or for something else. But again, ivermectin is an antihelminthic drug, meaning it's used for deworming, for parasitic infections. But where did they get the idea of using ivermectin? So let's just dive in to the issue, or since it's widely known from the news. What is the current evidence? So here, this is a paper published just last month, and they tried to read they tried to collect data from papers that were studying COVID-19 and ivermectin. These are papers, a lot of papers, a lot of papers. And then, this is a narrative review. So, as you can see, they didn't conduct any experimental study. They just read a lot of papers, a lot of documents regarding COVID-19 and ivermectin, and then they published their results. So they narrated the current evidence of ivermectin in COVID-19 management. So what's the basis? So their basis for testing ivermectin, they tested ivermectin for its anti-SARS-CoV-2 activity, for their anti-COVID-19 activity. And their basis for testing this, or their hypothesis, is that it has a antiviral activity. So how does this work? So for example, we have a virus, and this is the spike protein. Yeah, so let's say this is the spike protein. And we have a cell. So let's say this is the cell from our nostrils. So this is the nose, something like that. This is the nose, and we have a thin layer of. So we have here a thin layer of cells. So we have cells here, and this is the nucleus of our cells. This is the cell, and let's say this is the cell. This is the cell, and then this is the nucleus. So here in our nucleus, so we have the endoplasmic reticulum, we have the mitochondria, and we have the cell membrane. So in our cell membrane, there are proteins attached in our cell membrane for a cell-to-cell communication. So a lot. So this is the cell. So there are a lot of transmembrane proteins, and here there is one enzyme, call it ACE2, and it actually binds, or it fits. This one fits here, basically. Ayan. Binds. So this ACE2 binds to the spike protein of COVID-19, and what happens is that if it binds to COVID-19, so for example, this is the spike protein from COVID-19, and it binds to this receptor here in our phospholipid bilayer. Right, so let's say this is the phospholipid bilayer. And since ACE2 is a transmembrane protein, so meaning if it binds here, the DNA here gets in the cell. So this is the cell. It gets in the cell, and then what's next is that here in the nucleus, the DNA of the virus, the next step is for it to enter the nucleus. Now, what happens here is that in the study of ivermectin, there is an inhibition. Nabura. Natakpan pala. So, there is an inhibition. There's an inhibition of nuclear cargo imported. So, it inhibits the DNA of the virus from getting into the nucleus and replacing our DNA. So that's what happened. So that's what they were testing for the antiviral activity. It actually inhibits the import of the viral DNA to the cell's nucleus. So if ever they went into the cell, it cannot be imported into the nucleus. So that's what they were testing for the antiviral activity. But this is done in vitro. Meaning, what we mean by in vitro, this is an in vitro study. Essentially, in layman's term, it is a test tube study. Meaning, these were done outside of the body. So, toxic effects or other combinations with our physiology or other combinations with our body were not studied. That's why despite the accumulating evidence, they still suggest that the use of ivermectin is still inconclusive, meaning hindi pa siya approved. And continuing clinical trials, so again, we have local ivermectin clinical trials here in the Philippines, meaning we wanted to test the potential of ivermectin in the Filipino physique or in the body of a Filipino. And then what's good is that if this research or if the results are good, then drug developers can benefit and the public can benefit because we can actually form specific dosages so that ivermectin will not be poisonous or it will not exhibit adverse effects in our body. And that's one of the benefits of a research. And then, because other people conducted various researches, we can get the answers to our questions and make informed decisions. And what I've previously shown is a type of research, and it falls under quantitative research. And these are the researches that we are very familiar with because most of the researches present around us are all quantitative research. But what about qualitative research? But what about qualitative research? Do you have any idea about qualitative research? What is qualitative research, or what is an example of a qualitative research? So let's move on. So have you ever tried watching Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho? So some samples like Gabi ng Lagim, Babaeng Hindi Tumatanda, Ang Alagang Buhaya, yan, mga magsasaka sa Benguet, ganyan. So actually, interestingly, those are a type of qualitative research. This is an example of qualitative research. Why? It's focused on the quality of an event, the quality of a phenomena, the quality of people. It studies basically the quality of the people. So, for example, here, Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho, dalaga sa Davao, bakit tila hindi tumatanda? So, it narrates or it describes the quality of this person. And bakit siya naging point of research? It's because meron siyang phenomenon na nangyayari sa kanya, which is hindi siya tumatanda. So, that's a kind of research. And this one, they were trying to study the quality of this, yung buhaya and yung quality of life ng mga residente sa Mindanao because bakit nila inaalagaan to? At ginagawa nilang pet. So, they were trying to describe, to explore, and to understand the reasons behind this certain event or this certain phenomenon, why people do what they do. So, it's a type of qualitative research. And then this one, Bangin ng Panganib. And they were trying to describe yung event or yung phenomenon na a lot of farmers in Benguet na nagbubuhis buhay talaga sila just to provide us food and mga gulay, ganyan. So again, we were talking about or we were trying to highlight the quality. So it focuses on the quality. And then this one, we have mga batang babae sa Palawan, maagang ipinapakasal. So the quality of here these are itong sample na to, an example of indigenous people. I think they were from a tribe that's known as Palauan, something like that. They were from a tribe, and based on their customs, since indigenous people sila, meron sila mga pinaniniwalaan, meron silang presets of values na unique lang sa kanila, and those values or customs, we need to respect them. And yung ginawa nila dito, they were highlighting or describing the quality of life of these children or yung mga batang babae sa Palawan na maagang pinapakasal. They were describing and they were giving information, and they were showing that tribes like this exist. Ayan. So all this is a type of qualitative research. Ayan. So the next one, another sample of qualitative research. So this is very interesting and this is very timely. So the interviews of our presidential candidates are also featured in Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho. Although this one, meron tayong kulang na candidate. But, well, whatever. So I actually saw this Facebook post. I don't know if you saw this, but she was listening to Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho, and she plotted their answers to Jessica Soho's question. Basically, she collected data, and then she analyzed the data behind this interview. And what's interesting, because what she did is close to what you will be doing here in qualitative research. So there was a question. The question is, what is the Filipino problem and what is the solution? And then based on these interviews, she plotted this type of data. And then for example, for Lenny Robredo, she said that we don't learn from past mistakes, and that is the Filipino problem. And she showcased the solution, which is the value system, and then the educational system. So this is note to self. She added this note to self, or the analysis, her interpretation of data. She said that this is a good map, problematic map. Good map. Problematic map is a type of analysis. It's a type of problematic map. What she did, her method was a problematic analysis. This is a type of method wherein they focuses on the problem and its solution. So from here, she gives meaning to the data, wherein she said that this is a good map because there's a logical link between the problem and then a solution. So this answer actually provides a problem and then a solution. And then next one, Keeping Lacson, he said that the Filipino problem, hopeless, helpless, and then dreamless. Solution, better governance, change in attitude. However, she said she analyzed this, and then she said that there's no logical link between problem and solution. So that's her interpretation. That's her interpretation from the data. And then we have Manny Pacquiao, which is matigas ang ulo, and then hindi sumusunod sa batas. So she gave meaning, or the researcher gave meaning to this map, which is what is the root cause. So there was no root cause, and then ang solution is mag-coordinate at sumunod sa kinauukulan, mag-uusap. So that's the solution to the problem. And then for Isko Moreno, he didn't provide any solution, and then the root cause, but there was no link between the problem and solution, meaning walang may missing. There was something missing. But again, one of the qualities here is that it is subject to bias, since the qualitative research is subjective. Since it focuses on the quality, we do not have numbers to give evidences or to provide hard, solid evidences. But what we have is the researcher's interpretation. So it focuses heavily on the researcher's perspective. It is a type of qualitative research, and it is normal that it's subject to bias. That's why we have in qualitative research we have validation, we have this term validation, which we will be discussing in the next few weeks. Alright, so that's one example. I'm just showcasing that this is one example of a qualitative research. And what's interesting is you can also do this. You can also watch this interview. And you can also interpret their answers and to these questions based on your own interpretation. Alright, so again, let's go back to the meaning of research. So we have numbers here, and then we have words. So there are two types of research. The one that deals with numbers is what we know as quantitative research, and the one that deals with words is what we know as qualitative research. And then for quantitative research, as we have mentioned before, we have modeling. The example about flattening the curve, the differential equations, the predictions of COVID cases, the effective contact rate. So those are research under modeling or mathematical modeling. And then we have empirical research, which is based on numerical data. Like for example, the number of cases reported here in the Nalpihan. If we were trying to analyze, if we will use this to analyze what we want to know, then it is an empirical data because it deals with numerical evidence. And then we have experimental research. This is also under quantitative. So we have this one that they were trying to research more about Lagundi and more about VCO. Alright, so those are samples of quantitative data. But here in qualitative, we have document review, such as the example in ivermectin COVID-19 management. What is the current evidences? Wherein they didn't conduct any experimental studies, but what they did was they analyzed a series of studies, the published studies, papers, they analyzed papers, and then they analyzed the content, and then they provided their own interpretation or their own narrative review about it. So that's one kind of qualitative research, which is a document review. So for the content analysis, one of the good example here is the presidential debate or the presidential interview. They were analyzing the content of the interview, and then they were giving and then they would provide their analysis afterwards, which is the map or the problematic map. So for the observation, here in one of the examples here is the Kapuso Mo Jessica Tao, because they were observing how these people interacts with the buhaya. And then they were also observing the cultural interactions here in in Palawan. And then as an example of in-depth interview is this one, wherein they interviewed her personal experiences about her case or the phenomena that's been happening to her na hindi siya tumatanda. And we also have focus groups and case studies. And actually this one, one of yung story ng babae hindi tumatanda, so that from Davao is also a type of a case study. So let's look at it in a more. So again, this is a type of document review because they were trying to analyze papers, published papers, so from journals. So they were trying to publish a lot of papers, and they were collating and they were analyzing the data behind this. They were trying to summarize the current evidences provided about ivermectin in COVID-19 management. So that's one example of qualitative research under document review. And then for this one naman is content analysis. They were trying to analyze the presidential interviews, and then they were trying to give meaning to the answers of these presidential candidates based on a certain type of question, which is what's the Filipino problem and what is its solution. And for observation, we have this one because they were trying to observe the interactions between yung buhaya and the people or the community here in Mindanao. And for this one, it is actually known as ethnography because they were dealing with IPs or indigenous people here in Palawan, and they were observing the customs, they were observing the beliefs of these people. And it's also an in-depth, it can also be an in-depth interview, which is another example is this one, yung babae sa Davao na hindi daw tumatanda. And for focus groups, this can also be a type of focus group. This can also be studied as a focus group discussion because if this weren't a presidential interview, so if this was a presidential debate, so if they were actually debating among them, then this could be a focus group interview, and we can analyze all the data that arises from their discussion. Okay, so for the case studies, And this is also an example of case study because her case is that hindi siya tumatanda, something like that. And also it can also be a case study like the case of the farmers in Benguet and their struggle, their everyday struggle, or their just to put food to the table, right? And so from there, from the examples I have shown, I want you to think about the importance of those researches. Alright, so we have a recitation. So if you are watching this at home, just write in the comment, write one importance of research, and then pass the board to the classmate in front of you. So this is an activity during our face-to-face classes, but here in our online class, I want you to post a comment about one importance of research. Alright, so I'll give an example. So for example, it is a tool for building knowledge and efficient learning, like what they did with the ivermectin, what they did with the COVID, with the Legundi, with the VCO. So they build knowledge. And then a means to understand various issues, like for example, issues about COVID, like the ivermectin issue. So they were trying to understand the issue behind ivermectin. And the number 3, an aid to business success. And number 4, it's a way to prove lies and support truths. And number 5, a means to find, gauge, and seize opportunities. And number 6, a seed to sharing valuable information. Like for example, what Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho is doing is that they were sharing valuable information about the people and the quality of life that they are living. Number 7, it also serves as nourishment and exercise for the mind. And when we dive deeper, the importance of research to man is that it has improved the quality of life, and then it has improved the quality of our lives, and it has also improved education, and it also satisfies man's needs for knowledge, and then it reduces the burden of work. Like for example, it increases our efficiency. Like for example, cars and cell phones. We couldn't have phones today if it weren't for the people who have researches how to make cell phones, something like that. So that's one of the importance of research to man. And as conclusion, research is not new to us. In fact, it's very close to us, and we may have been already familiar with some types of researches like Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho, right? And research, it guides us to make informed decisions. And some of us may have also experienced research or experienced doing research. And in your own life, you may be creating potential researches that you are not aware of. So let's try to discover them. So I'm gonna be sharing. This is a research design. So again, let's try to remember the presidential interview. So what she did was, there was a data collection from the interviews, and then she processed the data into a map. So the result was, there was a product which is the map of the answers of presidential candidates. And after that is application. So what makes it fully a research is that is that you have to analyze how can it be applied and how can it be validated. And that's how we do research. So let's try to discover some of the potential researches that you are not aware of. Try to check your phone galleries. So what we are doing here is data collection. So let's try to collect data from your phone gallery or your FB stories or IG stories. So try to collect a story or picture you've taken or posted in each month of 2021. So you get to have a total of 12 stories. So one story for January, February up to December. So, and then I want you to process. So what we are doing after that is, for the data processing, I want you to describe each one of them, and then organize into descriptions, and then into categories, and then into themes. So based on how you want to interpret it. So I want you to describe, and interpret. Okay, and then after that, I want you to write an essay narrating your experiences in the year of 2021. So sample essay title, try to use a catchy or witty phrase, and then my 2021 pandemic story. So what we're doing here is that the product realized here is an essay. Alright, so and then validation, since it's coming from you, since it's your story, of course, it's already validated. So since this is just a kind of a personal research lang naman, so just for an exercise. And so this is an example. So I found this in Google. So there was a story like this. So like for example, January 2021, I tried making this pizza with my brother. There was a description, and then it was coded into or categorized into category. The category is making food, and the theme is developing skills or new skills. And then February 2021, I went out with friends, so being with friends, and the theme was maintaining or building relationships. And then for March 2021, for example, the description was I walked my pet around the park. So walking my pet, it can be classified under relaxation or unwinding, or it can be as a form of exercise. And then I want you to add your another stories from April to December 2021. So, and the product realized would be an essay, which is a narrative essay. So, a work in progress, my 2021 pandemic story. My year of 2021, I worked on various areas of my life. I've developed my skills in cooking. I also built and maintained my relationships with my friends, making sure I stay connected with them despite the pandemic. I also made sure to spend some time with my pet and exercise and do some exercises. So that's your performance tasks for this module. And then that's the end of our lesson. And thank you for listening.